when I was thinking of the name for this, I thought, well, they are planners, builders, or color plans and projects. But I'm not going to give you the magic recipe of how you can finance your own projects and your own plans. I'm going to talk in broader sense. And a nicer name for this presentation is the mouse, the money, the cat, and the book. I'll tell you at the end why. First, I want to show you, maybe since I've already given this introduction, you will easily understand what I mean, which is the most interesting indicator that can tell you something about the city. You have drawn plans, right? And you make color plans. And then you say, well, we're going to put colors in this plan according to what? Function, land use, what else? Density, income, what else?
People that live there.
People, that would be density. What? Height. What else? Accessibility. What? Green space. Infrastructure. Who? Who's sitting? You are exempted. You don't have to attend the rest of the lecture. Land price. Why land price? Because inside land price we have everything that you say. We have income, infrastructure, green space, density, number of people, power, everything in one single indicator. How many of you actually draw, when you're doing a plan, draw a map of the land values of a city? Raise your hand. You do, oh, you sometimes. Oh, sometimes. Well, I'm happy that you're also exempted. So many planning departments and schools neglect that indicator. Now with 3D, we can do this for instance. I can do this. Which city is this? Do you recognize it? London. How did you recognize it? Now we can't see inside, but if you would move this 3D model, you would probably see an empty line here. What is the value of the fence? Let me bring two other concepts, use value versus exchange value. This is a map that has to do with exchange value. The use value of the fence is really very important. If you would draw a map of the environmental assets in London, you would probably do a different map. You would probably put the fence with very high lines. Well, it's a bit polluted, so maybe not so high. So it will be the opposite one. Another thing why London is famous is because they have green belt. So if you would draw the use value of the green belt, you would have a very high yield going along. But we're not talking about use value, we're talking about exchange value. To me, exchange values are more interesting because it tells you what society is willing to pay in order to have access to those use values. And partly, you don't pay much for the green. You pay a lot for the social location. To be next to the Queen, I don't know. To be next to Parliament. To be next to the city where all the financial services are. And that's why you would see it. Maybe what can you tell us about these high prices? It's a very desired area because it's very centrally located. If we could see the river, probably it's enjoying also the amenities of the river. But it also has to do with Tony. Who told me? This is you told me this. So, what do you think this represents? Speculation. You're also accepted. But wait for it. Wait a little bit. Not in this specific case, but you model it, bring it back to facility. What else does it represent? What other use value is there that people are willing to pay a lot to exchange and pay for it? That has already been said. What else? You already mentioned it. High density. Profitable land users, commercial land users can always pay more than households for their housing. So we have high densities, commercial land users, shopping centers, office space that can pay a lot, and on top of that, they can hold high density. Shopping centers cannot hold high density. They pay even more per square meter than office space. But they cannot go in high density because nobody will find it. Well, only in Hong Kong I saw 10-story high shopping places, but they have to be provided with very expensive infrastructure, escalators that will take you immediately. And usually the thing that's on the top, it's not really very commercial. So commercial per square meter, you can pay a lot, but it's difficult to go high density. Office space. It also tells us that it has all the infrastructure that you need. All of the communications, in spite of London having a tax for car owners that want to go to the city center, in spite of that, since people say, I have to go to the city center to my office, and therefore I will not pay so much for an office in the city center, because I need to program part of my money to pay for this tax. Nonetheless, if we didn't have that, then prices would be high. Except that congestion would push it down. So it's not only things that we want, also things that we don't want push down this indicator. So this is the most comprehensive indicator. I advise you every time you go down to this country. Not easy to come this information. This one is a bit distorted. It's not the land value. It's the total value of the housing units, which include the value of the house, the built part of the house. But as I will explain just in a minute, it's not really that relevant. Even if this is not exactly what I've been explaining, because it has the building component, it comes very deep. Even income. If you have two people living all in high-rise buildings, next to a house with people that live in very low densities, you might find that the value of the land is equivalent. How can the pool get good locations? By getting together and densifying. And therefore they can push out of the market the rich people. On top of that, the rich people don't want to have poor people next to them to move out. But beyond that, at least density-wise, that's the function. And that's another reason why we have no values in the periphery. Wealthier people that can pay more, but they pay for more amount of land per house. And therefore, we would have to. This has a lot of implications. I won't stop here because you can see that the gradients are very, very high here, and then they're going to be sort of softened down to the periphery. So any change here will mean that the value will increase very fast. That's when you have speculation. If you are a speculator, where would you buy? Here, here, or here, or here in between? Will that speculation too?
Yeah, around that area with small peaks that would be there, you still have to keep.
Is there?
Yeah, the one in the middle.
Yeah?
Yeah, that one there.
Why?
Because you can see the high peak going up, so I expect the other ones, the red, will gather out more and more.
Probably will expand.
Yeah.
And if you have two, well, the middle part will expand. But there's another reason. You buy at a very low price, and it will increase. Percentage-wise, much more than if you buy here. It won't increase really very much. So you have to invest a lot for a minor increase, and you will invest. And you can say the same thing even in the periphery. You can buy at an agricultural value. You can buy in the green belt, and then go to the next local government to change the land. And the value will increase enormously when you pocket a little. There's a difference going on when you come back to it. You can see this is London, and this is the rest of the UK. So it is the most expensive city. Everybody wants to be there. It's a prime city throughout the world. The next largest city is Birmingham. Compare the value of property. This is the entire country. So nothing in Europe. Last year there was a vote to see if Scotland will get independence from the UK. I don't know if you were aware of that. And they almost made it that they couldn't do it. If I was a speculator, would I buy land in Scotland? I'm not so sure. But I would not be able to buy land in London. I would make my numbers and check what was the price before they announced independence, what would be the price after independence. And then I just wait, just like you just wait for the man to come. It's a big risk. Maybe they voted, no, you don't get independence, or and you lose money. There's a risk. That's the game of speculation. 4 facts. The value of rural property has fallen. In the past, wealthy people used to have rural land. I'm talking mostly about developed countries than developing countries where you still have very wealthy rural areas. So this is by Piketty. Has anybody read Piketty? You're also thinking. You even pass entire course. This guy is really revolutionizing the thinking of economics, especially on taxation. At the end of his very big book, he's talking about let's tax wealth, not income. And he has very amazing amounts of data from the 1970s, 3 centuries. And he gives a lot of indicators. One of them is that the value of land as a percentage of GDP has been negligible. It used to be that if a country had, I don't know, 1 unit of gross domestic product, the value of the land would be 5 times that. That's what I mean. But now it's negligible. On the other side, the value of urban property has and will continue to rise. 200 to 400% of GDP. Twice or sometimes 4 times like in France, higher than what they produce every year. So this is going on. If there is wealth going up in this world, it is urban. I hope that when you leave this room, you don't go and buy land. That's one risk that I always take. So he has proven that. He has also proven that there are all other sources of wealth. This is just an extract of some of the things that he discusses. The other thing is this value of property. How much is it for land and how much is it for buildings? So Martin Walker makes this calculation. He has a book that he has written a lot of things related to the value of land. And he explains this. When you build a new house or a new building, usually from the 100% of the value of the building, 20% is equivalent of it. As time goes by, the value of the land increases. There's more demand, there's more pressure, and that's why it increases. But the value of the buildings starts going down, they depreciate, they get old, they need repairs. So this starts going down to it becomes negligible. And more or less, after 30 years, half of it is the value of it. And the rest of it is the value of it. We go back to London. London has a lot of old buildings. So that graph that I was showing at the beginning, even if it's the compound value of the entire houses, most of it, or at least half of it, has to be living. And this is only a calculation for 40 years. 60 years, that's when you decide to demolish the building and build something else. And if this is going to be 20% of a future building, then you have to invest a lot. That's why if we recognize that, we start understanding why it is so difficult to redevelop over time. Because the landowner will say, oh, I'm not going to sell my land at this price. My expectation is. And then you start realizing the city has a lot of value, a lot of assets in the land. We see the buildings, but we don't realize that it's the land. One of the reasons why we study all these things after we've done our first degree is because we need to understand something that we cannot see. That is the non-value. Fourth fact. The value of land jumps to planning and public works, to city creation. Because right now, I'm assuming a slow increment of the value of land. And then we have Jaramillo, and also Smolka, that argue, okay, it starts at 20%, and because the demand is growing, because we keep on having kids, we go to the cities, and there's a lot of pressure. Can you see this sort of orange line? It increases the value of land. There are different estimates, but it's between 1 and 2% a year. There is also a cyclic kind of value going up and down. And that's associated with real estate bubbles. That sometimes the economy overheats and there's a lot of investment in property, then the economy collapses and then prices go down, and then they start increasing, starting down. The Netherlands suffered one in 2008, and also the US, a lot of other European countries, and it went down. It's catching up. But these cycles sort of go around this general tendency. And those have to do with the total macroeconomic situation. Cities don't have control of it. The city has control over this kind of changes. Land use change. Like we were saying, I mean, you buy at the value of a green belt, and you negotiate a change for residential. Wow, it can jump 3, 4, 5, 10 times. Residential high density, 10, 11, 12, 20 times. These jumps are controlled by the city. The city becomes very powerful. And here with the mouse comes in. It's the power of the mouse. That all of you have when you click and you say, this area, the park, click, body of land. No, let's put it residential. Click, whoop. Double density, whoop. No, not here, but here, whoop. Just with a click of it. So if you're studying planning and you ever become government officials and you're drawing a plan for the participatory process, everybody says in a meeting, oh no, that should change to a park. No, we should double the density here. If you're not aware of that, you're missing the big opportunity.
So can I ask something?
Yes.
About the third diagram, which you showed that, when the time passes by, the value of the land has increased. Can you explain how this is related to the economical changes? I mean, the change in the economical structure in the time period and how it affects this change?
The one I drew here is the one that you see here, and that has to do with the systemic, the overall structural way that land values increase. And that has to do with the relationship between supply and demand. Supply is fixed, we only have this earth, and even if there are people that there's a market in the moon already, but once it's fixed, and that is the supply, and demand continues to grow. More people demanding wider spaces, more activities. That pushes prices higher and higher. So the mere fact that there is more demand than supply, and that demand keeps on growing, pushes prices very slowly. I could make another one where I would put this other one, which is cyclic, and it would go like that, and this one would go like that, but the buildings would depreciate. Or I could, in this specific plot, I would say there's a land use, and now you can double the density. Well, it jumps. You will probably build 2 reds, because you're putting 2 houses, but the value of the land, without doing anything, it increases. So there are 3 different types of processes that push these prices. There's always someone that says, and what about if you live next to the waste disposal dump? Well, yes, those exceptions exist, and then the other way will go down. But there are much less of those exceptions than this. This is the thing. Okay? Now, we live in an environment that has several institutional changes. One is decentralization. There are more responsibilities given to the cities, and less money going to them. So cities have to think, well, what is my best local source? How? The value of land. My local wealth has to do with it. If you look at the history of countries that have actually mobilized the value of land to finance everything that they need, at one stage in their history they came to this conclusion. I can't get money from central government, they keep on pushing I'm responsible for social housing, health, education, and everything like that. But we creating the value of land. Why don't I have an instrument that allows me to capture part of that land? No, it's changed slowly. Well, it showed everyone, it doesn't matter. Not just with the purpose, it doesn't matter. The second one is democratization and an increase of social awareness. Throughout the world, there's more democracy. Perfect, imperfect, there is more democracy. There's more awareness of social problems, quality, how people can have access to basic services. So there is more demand to reduce inequality. And usually they become responsibility of the local government. And also to provide services which have always been part of local government, but the list of responsibilities keeps on increasing. And then another thing that has changed is a definition of property rights and obligations. For the last 30 years, everybody has rights, individual rights. I have rights, I fight for my rights, including the right I have for land, the right for housing, the right to the city. And what about the obligations? What about the responsibility? So in the past sort of 5 years, this is the new thing. Yes, now everybody has acquired rights, you also have obligations. I have the right to own land, yes, but you have the obligation to pay taxes. You have the obligation to pay for the infrastructure. We're not going to pay for it. I mean, not everybody's going to pay for your location, your advantages. Why? Unless you pay a tax to pay for all those unless you pay through a tax or any other way for that advantages, then we will let you stay. You can sell it at a very high price. Part of what you pay, you have to share with everybody. Because all of us pay for this fee. They all pay for the tuition, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you indirectly pay for this. So why should someone enjoy it in an exclusive way? The other thing, the power of it. Now someone took away
Someone took away the power of the monster.
A question.
Yes.
But in that system, you're thinking that everybody has the ability to pay.
He has it. If they don't, imagine, he pays a very high amount. And you go and spend it in, I don't know, you said you are from India, right? You go to, I don't know, which is the most expensive is in India. You go to Hong Kong and gamble. If you have to pay for that, you would not go to Hong Kong. And with that money, the city would finance a table for them. So they can put their notebooks. So it is about cross-subsidizing. How do you pay for the advantages? And that with the extra money, we improve the quality of life of the employee.
I'm taking the case of, let's say, I was working here on the
Yes,
SPS,
yes.
and then I am providing services on a very minimal level to the, let's say, bringing in questions, providing something, and but I am not, because I cannot, I'm not bringing any more questions further, or I'm not contributing anymore. You ask me to move somewhere else, where I can still see the board, but I'm not able to hear clearly to you. So is that
That is a very interesting question. You are also exempted from the rest of the class. You in India have used an instrument which is called land sharing, where if he wants to be there and he has the ability to pay you, but you are squatting and you don't have, but you need all those advantages, not only access to infrastructure, probably you are there because you have access to your job. Then your children can go to school. If they go there, they won't have schools. So you have him share the land with you. Half of the land you can keep it, half of the land he uses it. And he finances, you will have to sort of compress, he finances your compression.
but to what
And therefore
level?
you can stay there.
Like I'll give an example in India, is that Dharavi is one of, in the epic center of economic centers possible, most expensive land in India, and they are asking around 1 million people to just move away, and that 1 million people who are occupying the highest densities in the world, they are supposed to be crushed to 1/3 of that land, which is like triple the density. Is that fair? And those people work in the city, so they are providing.
It's not a perfect instrument. And actually you do in Mumbai an even more complicated thing. But it is about you having to accept, it's a trade-off. Yes, you will have higher densities, you have to compress, but you will maintain your location. And in order to do that and improve the quality of life, because Dharavi has a very terrible quality of life. So to improve all the health services, we need money. In Panda City, I don't have it. And he has it because he wants to be there. I have you share it, and his money pays for it. In the specific case of Dharavi, they do it a bit differently. It's called transfer development. So, because there is an investor that wants to build something in the periphery, they tell them, but you don't have the right to build that high density. You have to buy the rights from this area. And that money will go to this area to finance it. I'm oversimplifying a very sophisticated instrument that we have to finance that. It's not a perfect fund, but it's much better than not doing it. And to me, it has the advantage that it maintains the people in the place. Unfortunately, densities in Arabia are so high that not everybody will be able to stay.
So I think there, if I may just include that, perhaps there's a question of justice and what and the trade-off that people are able or willing to accept.
Yeah.
And how they would do it in the past is they would kick you out and you have to go
One money you
else. So
get
you
up
lose
and you go
everything.
to- yeah.
You lose your job, your location, and you don't improve the quality of your services. So it is a trade-off. The other one is, well, it's a market-driven agenda. And instead of denying it, let's face it and use it in our country. There's also privatization. And the concept behind it is there are no free riders. Now, you got an example where you are a smoker, but if you were not, then you cannot enjoy everything without paying for it. If you want the benefits, you have to internalize the costs. And this has to do also with the definition of property rights and obligations. Yes, I want everybody to improve around me without me paying for anything at all. Well, if you are internalizing the benefits, also internalize the costs. So this is another thing that is changing the world. Slowly, but it's changing. Multilateral agencies have finally understood this. UN Habitat is understanding it. Actually, United Nations understood it in the 1970s. If you go to the Vancouver summit, is Habitat 1, which is the Habitat 3 in Ecuador. Well, the first one was in Vancouver. You read it, they understood this. So the idea of capturing the value of land to finance the city was very strong in the agenda. But then it was overridden by this. It was in all communism. You know. But now they are understanding, well, how are we going to finance everything? They are now understanding it's about property rights and obligation. If you want the benefits, you should pay for the costs. So they brought it back in their agenda, land-based finance. The World Bank, from a different perspective, they said we don't have enough money. We keep on investing in all this infrastructure. The landowners next to this infrastructure get rich, and the city or the country that we gave them the loan cannot pay us back. Why don't they charge the benefits to those landowners and therefore they can pay them back? So they are again thinking about financing. Before they were thinking of this, who had to pay for those loans? Everybody paying income taxes. The other one is that planning is not enough, you need implementation. All the countries that's coming out from socialist regimes are introducing a lot of planning, like in the Western world. Sometimes more sophisticated planning strategy, blah, blah, blah. But they are understanding that they have to introduce rules of equitable distribution. So the emphasis is also on the instruments to implement that plan, and quite a lot of them have to do with it. Now, instruments. There's an enormous many of instruments. The classical one is strong property taxes. The countries that have the strongest property tax in the world are the developed countries. Every time they come to our countries and say, don't increase your taxes, why? In your country you have very high taxes. Why should I have low taxes? You have very high taxes, and that's how you pay the infrastructure in your cities. So why should I reduce them? They reflect that based on zoning and the power of the laws. So it's the highest capture in the world. Developing countries have about 1/10 in average. And I'm not saying that the best thing is to follow the developed countries. What I'm saying is that their urbanization started in the 19th century. They made a lot of mistakes. Eventually, they came to the conclusion, the value of the land, that's how we can improve the cities. And they started introducing this. Latin America, the next part of the world that started having high urbanization rates in the 20th century, we made a lot of mistakes. Now we are the leaders and thinking, what can we do to improve, to capture the Asia also high urbanization rates. Some countries, India, Thailand, the Philippines, and not so much Indonesia. China, definitely, they understand the value of land. That's how we can finance our city. All this enormous development in China is being financed through land manufacture. Africa, we keep on talking about
No, it's a shame.
And because Africa, they are beginning to have high urbanization rates. And every time we go, don't make the same mistakes that we did. Start introducing land-based type of financing instruments. Development exactions, those have existed for a long time. And everybody's saying, oh no, we want development. Please let landowners and developers, they should not provide for roads. Reduce the standards of the roads and the parks and everything. Why? Every time you reduce those standards, the value of the land increases. Because they get more profit. So another thing that is coming up is, no, increase exceptions for the new fees, benefit levies, whatever you want to do. Either on site or off site or many ways. The UK is the most interesting. They exercise it. Do you want to change this green belt into residential? Well, without me city having to introduce infrastructure, you have to pay for all the infrastructure yourself as an infrastructure. And if there is extra money, you have to pay me. And I will use it for other things, for example, social. They even have as an exception, you have land developer, the obligation to include social housing in the pay with the profit that you will make. Very similar to the mentioned proactive planning. Oh,
I think it's better to just to do
your mouse is completely with my mouse.
No, no,
Sharing the power. So we have now more joint ventures. The Netherlands, Scandinavia, they do it this way. Also land banking, land leasing, like in China. And land adjustment. This is the latest thing. Assembling land to share costs and benefits. We use it in India, you call it land pooling. Japan, Germany, Spain, South Korea, Australia also use it. Trading development rights. This is the latest fashion. You own the land, but you do not own the development rights. You have to buy them from the city. France and the US are the ones that have used it. Next one. An example in the US, this is the Montgomery County. The owners of the city have limited rights to develop. They want more rights, they have to buy them from the farmers. And if they buy them from the farmers cannot develop. So this is a policy that they use for environmental protection. Because imagine, I own a farm and I want to develop because I get a profit. No, you have to stay. The plan says that you're green. Why, it's not fair. You are allowed for high densities to build that. Okay, the devices system whereby you have to buy the rights from the farmer. Similar to what they're doing in very sophisticated system. But those are fighting who started doing this with the Americans in the French. But this is how it works. So this was authorized for half density. You want that extra density, you have to buy it from the region. And that's the way you can reserve, and you can allow this to go. You are equalizing rights. Costs and benefits are shared between everybody. If you don't have this in your planning system, you will have these guys fighting against you. And this will be very happy because they got for free the higher density. Okay? And then they thought of using it inside the city. Why not? To preserve historical buildings. So this is the old Central train station in New York. This is when all the migrants to the US would arrive, and from here they would take a train, and after that a car went to conquer the West. So this has a very high meaning for the Americans. Not only the Statue of Liberty, which was the first thing that they would see. The second thing was this one where they would take the train. But this is privately owned, so the owner said, I want to demolish it. So they said, why don't we let him sell it to this guy who built a higher flat, you can see the difference. And next thing. So it is transferring these rights in order to preserve these. And this is how you see it right now. If you take a photograph, they're in the back. You didn't have to increase the infrastructure in the area. Now, we will see another example later in the case of Brazil, because this is a transfer between a private and a private. In Brazil, all of those extra development rights are owned by the city. Bricks. You are builders, you know what bricks is. You will also recognize what this is going to be. This is a different kind of brick. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So let's see, this is just a sample of what those countries are doing. Brazil, like I said. Land use plans have a basic FAR. Everybody knows what FAR is? Flow to area ratio to rate of mentioned.
or error ratio.
Area maximum. You own the minimum. If you want more, you need to buy them. For the city. to bonds that they call it. Russia, they have extensive public land that they inherited from the previous regime, and instead of selling, well, they do sell it, but they also lease it. And by that way, they capture the money. They also have an innovative land value tax. They tax the land, but not the buildings. Another one, India. They have development corporations, we have land pooling for cross-subsidizing, and there's a payment of landowners and contractors with FSI. That's what they do in Arabic. Please rebuild and improve this settlement. I will pay you with FARs that you can go and sell on it. China, they expropriate at the use value and they lease the land for a planned use value. So the city is able to keep all of the income. And with that is that they are financing all of the infrastructure uses. They auction premiums almost all of the developers, and with that they finance infrastructure. Last one, South Africa. It's not doing much, but they are already implementing community land shares for infrastructure and social engagement. And also reinvesting that land value capture. They also do joint venture. They are learning, doing lots of mistakes. They used to have like the Russians that tax only the value of land, but about 4 years ago they eliminated tax free. Not everyone understands that. This is an example of Sao Paulo. I won't go into detail, but this is a big, large area project where they say all of this area, all of the extra development rights are owned by the city. And if you want to, you will sell it to you. And with that, they are financing this kind of picture. And not only that, this area has slums, favelas in Brazil. So they are improving the favelas. Yes, instead of low density, they have high density. But they provide even with schools to train them as chefs, as different things, for them to continue living here and get their children. And also, in this case, it's so successful that they are getting $240 million a year. It's the first time that when a mayor came, when a new mayor comes, the treasury is empty. No, it was full of money because the previous administration couldn't even spend anything. That's really unique. They even, with this need to spend it, they build this very sophisticated picture that we didn't need.
No, excuse me. Okay.
So when you are rich, you become crazy. Be careful. They made a mistake. They should have included in the way they made the law that they could invest outside the area. Unfortunately, you can only do it inside. That's the big mistake. So they're trying to find ways of bringing money out for other areas that they need. Excuse me?
No, the bridge.
The bridge.
Okay.
Now, you know how much time I have, but I'll try to go as fast as possible. 4 eyes. We need an ideological change. But it's very interesting. The left-wing paradigm says land has only a use value. The right-wing paradigm says there should be a fair trade, and therefore to equalize the trade, there should be a land. Both of them coming from radical different places. You recognize these two guys? These days? Do you recognize this one? Not so famous. He was more famous about 50 years ago, Henry George. Every economist had to do it. And they said the following. He said,
it's good. It's doing it on its own.
He would say, use value is different from exchange value. He would say, land value is a social creation. He would say, land is not limited, you can always increase it with work. He was talking about rural land. You introduce fertilizers, you make it more productive. In the case of cities, you go higher density, you are creating more space. This is still very controversial. He said, land is more scarce as to economic purposes. he wrote a book called Progress and Poverty. He said, why society is progressing, but also poverty is increasing? And he blamed it to land. Karl Marx used to say, investor is different from a landowner. The investor exploits the worker. The landowner is even worse. He's a passive. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't even exploit. He just sits back and waits to invite the land. He didn't like landowner silence. He was actually a capitalist. And as a capitalist, he hated land because he had to share his profits with the landowner. So the landowner extracts a rent from both of us. Solutions. Marx said all of our land should be public or collected. And it should only have a use value, not to exchange value. Henry George said, no, my instrument is put a tax to the landowner so high that it is equivalent to the value. So that money goes back. So you can continue being a landowner and parading yourself as a duke that owns a lot of land. You have to pay such a high tax that they will invest it in this. At the end, they were both having no rent to land, but to the city. No rent to land, but to the city. And therefore we have. So we have Karl Marx and Henry George.
I wish I had come up with that. It doesn't go.
It's amazing. And they are not the only ones. A lot of economists that come from different ideologies agree in that principle. Second challenge, landowners versus developers. The guys that build are different from the guys that own. Sometimes we mix them. We think they're the same thing. They are fighting against each other. And that's why, in the case of Henry George, he hated that he had to share his profits with the landowner. So it's a struggle for the profit. Next one. The developer pulls from one side, and the landowner pulls from the other side. Who do you think wins? Who is stronger?
The landowner has
The
more time.
landowner.
Yeah, he has more time. He can just wait.
Yes, I can wait. You cannot pay for my land. But the builder has to build, otherwise their capital loses value. So they go somewhere else until they find, I knew they were going to come. And if you don't want, there's some small developers there. So they are the strong ones. And that's why we need to understand when people tell me, well, how do I deal with these developers? Well, first find out if they also own land, because then they are fighting like landowners. Look for developers that only build, because they don't have land. They will be on your side. And that's what they did in Brazil. All these areas, there were a lot of builders that didn't have land. So they told them, don't worry, you don't have to buy the land from them, you buy the development rights from us. The value of the land collapsed because you couldn't do anything with it. And all that money went to the city. And now developers are very happy, they invested paying for these bonds, and now they go and acquire land at a very cheap price. Perfect instrument, the city has money to give it back. When you pay the landowner, it doesn't give you back anything. If you pay through whatever instrument, for example, tax, as you do in this country, they will give it back. Okay, they might keep up they might keep part of it in their pocket because of corruption, but they will give back more than the landowner. I always believe that the system that we have is equivalent to have 100% corruption with the landowner. So why don't we reduce it? Well, okay, you do have to fight against corruption, but it's a better deal to have that money go to the government. First I, the inertia. Nobody wants to change. Usually you hire a lawyer that tells you, no, we can't. Any Dutch in the room? What is one of the favorite places in the world? You can, no, I can't. No, I can't. No, I can't. I learned that you have to ask the 5 times and then they say, oh, yes,
Oh, that's a bad.
that's a bad place.
Pretty well.
5 times. Okay. And it's similar to a lawyer. Don't hire lawyers that tell you how you can't do things. Hire lawyers that tell you how you can do things. This inertia has to do with bureaucracy, with culture, with bad dependence on you don't change things. Next one. It's very much the story, the allegory of the 5 monkeys. Have you heard about this story? They did an experiment, and they had 5 monkeys in the cell, and with a ladder. And on the top of the ladder, some monkeys. They were hungry, so they came to this place and immediately rushed up to get the And those researchers were doing an experiment, so they threw some water at them so that they didn't go. I mean, like in those slides where they throw water to the pressure. So you don't dare go up. Is anybody doing a place where they've done it? They don't do it anymore. In my times, when you go to the station, what they would do is it really hurts. So you wouldn't dare go to the bananas. So they took out one of the monkeys and they put a new monkey. This new monkey saw the banana and he tried to go up the stairs. The other 4 monkeys started hitting him. Don't. They were afraid of the water. But nobody threw more water at them. Next, they took another monkey out of the cell and they put a new monkey inside. And this new monkey tried to go up. And everybody hit him, including the monkey that didn't have experience with water. They did that with the 3rd monkey, the same thing happened. What? Everybody hit him. 4th monkey, same. Everybody hit him. 5th monkey, new monkey, tried to do it. Everybody hit him. And none of them had ever experienced the water. None of them. Bureaucracy, culture, we don't know why, but we've always done it like that. Be careful. One reason why you go to university is to understand why and go at that and change things. So if you go and do the same thing that everybody has been doing, it's a waste of time. Plus, ignorance. For example, you think that sometimes they say, why don't we subsidize people so that they can buy that expensive land? Subsidies inflate prices. Well, let's do the opposite. Truth to the wrong. That's why you study. Knowledge has proven that it's the other way around. The law says, and in the Netherlands you have the civil code, and you should have this as a principle. No one is entitled to enrichment without a just cause. We were once lecturing one of my colleagues was a lawyer who said, you have it in that law. And oh yes, but we don't use that part of the law. Most of them turn around, do we have it? Yes, so we don't have to change the law? No, you already have it, it's just a matter of enforcing it. Ignorance is the worst enemy. Land comes with responsibility. That's knowledge that we should have, the basic things that we should know about. And that's the responsibility of us. And that's why I lecture. Because I believe that through knowledge, many people do this because they don't know that it works differently. And I believe the power of knowledge, if people only knew how it works, they might make different decisions. And if you don't believe Carlos Morales, please believe these 8 Nobel Prizes, economists, that said the same thing. The one I like the best, he didn't get the Nobel Prize, but he's a top economist, is Shoup. Shoup said, why is it so difficult to fund infrastructure that increases the value of the service line by more than the actual cost of infrastructure. Don't argue that you don't have money. The World Bank finally understood it. And that everybody knows, especially in your countries, that infrastructure is so scarce. When you are going to decide with the power of the North, I'm going to introduce infrastructure. In my land, because the value will increase. Not only the use value of actually having accessibility, because the day you sell, even if you don't sell, if it's your children. And we all have, in many of our countries, this mentality. We save our money in land because land will not deteriorate. The value will always increase. Next slide. Let's go back to this one. The power of the mass. Connected to this. What if we decide to allow for high density here? The value goes down. Typical planning decision. Next one. Let's have a cat controlling the numbers. So that part of that money is reinvested inside. It's infrastructure, social housing. One of the policies that has been increasing is called inclusionary housing, where you tell the developer, okay, you can develop commercial housing, but a percentage of it has to be social housing. You have to. We do it in the UK, we do it in France, we do it in the Netherlands. 30% of the house of any development in the Netherlands is built in social housing. In Spain, in some municipalities in the US, they're doing it in Colombia, they're doing it indirectly in Brazil, Indonesia, who's from Indonesia? You have it in Indonesia, it's called, I think, balanced housing, and it's the one I like best. We call it the 1, 2, 3. For every rich house, you have to build 2 middle income and 3 social housing. So every community should be mixed. Everybody's fighting against it, a lot of implementation problems, but they have it for 20 years. So it's already in the law. Did you know about it?
No,
now you know it.
Now I know.
So I've achieved my objective, at least one of the I's. You already have that knowledge. You have to fight against ideology, interest, and emotion. Last one is so the mouse, because of his mind, this is a rat actually, should be controlled. Who is the cat? Is the cat the government? Is it a democratic government? But apart from that, back by knowledge. And that's why we're here. That's why I was invited. Thank you. That's why after many years, he only said in my academic background, you can figure out from my age that I've been as well. And I've worked in local and national governments and banks and NGOs and things like that. And at him I said, well, this is what I've learned. I feel I need to do